Once upon a time, there was a brother and a sister named Hansel and Gretel. They lived with their father and evil stepmother in a very small town in Wyoming. Their father was a woodcutter, and he was very, very poor. Unfortunately, the stepmother was battling an extremely harsh sickness and is currently in the hospital. The doctors do not know if she will be able to return home or not.
I'm sick and we don't have enough money to support ourselves or the kids. We have to get rid of them.
I would not do that to my own children. Do you think I really let them out all alone?
If you don't, we'll all die anyway.
She insisted so much on the idea of leaving their kids out in the middle of nowhere that the father finally agreed to carry out this evil plan. But Hansel and Gretel were not sleeping during the wife's proposal of the plan. They were wide awake and was behind the door, which was slightly open. After the conversation between their father and stepmother ended, Hansel comforted Gretel by saying this to her.
Don't cry, little sister. We're gonna be back before the sun comes down.
The next day, the father called for Hansel and Gretel. He told them a lie to convince them to go with him on a short drive out of town. Hansel and Gretel gets in the car right after their father gets in the driver's seat. The short drive they were convinced to go on actually turned out to be a long drive to the outskirts of town. The father stopped the car and hesitantly dropped them off. The father said this to the kids.
Stay here until I come back.
The father got back in his car and drove off very, very slowly. Hansel and Gretel did exactly what their father demanded. They started wandering around the area to see if there was anything interesting. They found nothing. A couple hours later, they noticed that their father has still never come back, and they fear that he will never be back. More time has passed, and the night has come. Luckily for them, Hansel had something in his pocket.
Where the heck are we?
Don't worry. I have 2 flashlights on the way back home.
Hansel soon realized that coming from a poor family meant a major shortage in items, and in this case, these batteries of the flashlights haven't been replaced in a really, really long time. Unfortunately, the flashlights ran out of battery, and the partially lit up night became complete darkness once again. The flashlights that Hansel stole from the house ended up making the situation worse than better.
What are we going to do now?
The loud scream from Gretel made a noise that was heard around the world. Apparently, it even attracted a dark figure. It was at an average height, but the voice was extremely weird. Without the flashlights, you could barely see the face of this dark figure through the darkness of the night. It turns out to be a witch, and it takes the kids to what looks like a large abandoned house. The witch said this to the kids.
I don't think we should.
Don't worry, she won't hurt us.
Of course not. I'm too old.
The two siblings didn't have many options. It was either stay out in the middle and eventually die, or stay at the witch's house and allow her to support them. They debated for a while, but Hansel and Gretel didn't feel threatened by the witch. Hansel and Gretel decided to stay with the witch. However, Hansel felt hesitant to continue in the house because he noticed the witch's weird obsession for sharp metal objects.
What's wrong?
I'll just care much about it. She don't know us.
Oh no, she's going to kill us.
Hansel and Gretel look around the room and not only notice the large amount of sharp metal objects, but also notice the fact that they haven't been cleaned. Both Hansel and Gretel fear that they may be weapons with the possible blood of the witch's victims. They start to sweat and hope for a way out of this murderous house. Just like what Hansel and Gretel were doing when they were listening to their stepmother's proposal of her evil plan, the witch was lurking around the room, very, very quietly. She was up against the door, listening to each and every single word the siblings were saying. The witch was ready to take advantage of the situation and show her true colors.
Right.
Come on, run!
As the witch was charging at Gretel, Hansel was seen completely frozen at the possibility of seeing his own sister getting killed right in front of him. After noticing Hansel being completely frozen, Gretel uses her quick reflexes to stop the witch, grab the weapon, and kill her with it. Both Hansel and Gretel were in complete relief after seeing the witch dead. Hansel and Gretel runs out of the room, out of the abandoned house, and into the fields. Fortunately for them, they found an old parked car. They get in the car, start the car, and drive as far away as possible. But this car was too old and Hansel and Gretel ended up crashing. They were brought to a hospital and the father was called. Gretel was pronounced dead and Hansel is extremely lucky to live. Hansel and father reunite.
I'm sorry, I couldn't save Gretel. I'm sorry for leaving you all alone when there could be danger. Oh, we're going? Oh. Oh no! What's wrong?
I'm just care about your body. She don't know it.
Oh no! She's going to get. Bro.